2 posts in rapid succession. Okay, we've been discussing so far the treatment options that are available to us. I've discussed the frustrations of just the fertility treatment in of itself. I'm still not sure whether I have a treatment plan, so we'll have to see what happens. But part of what today was, and today we went to visit the reproductive biology unit, first of all to learn about the ICSI process, but also to speak to a counselor about sperm donation. And I sort of have mixed feelings about the session, and I've given, in fact, the name of this blog to the woman who conducted the session, so, you know, I certainly don't mean in any way, shape, or form to be insulting to her. But I do have certain issues with what happened. And again, I think it may just be an insurmountable cultural misunderstanding between men and women about how guys feel about sperm donation. Because she asked me, why was I concerned about this? And I said, because it's an issue of raising another man's child. There's a lot of evolutionary, you know, baggage there. And frankly, it's in the back of my head. It's a screaming loud noise that gets very angry when I think about it. And it's not entirely rational. And I would really hope that a counselor that's sitting in that position, counseling people about sperm donation, would already understand that. And would be ready to address those feelings. Jealousy. You know, talk to me about jealousy. Talk to me about how other guys face that down. But that wasn't what it was about. It was merely an issue of, well, you know, people sort of get over it, it'll still be your child, and again, the sort of the platitudes that I sometimes hear, you know, and Hope, again, you know, mentioned that, you know, she doesn't really see it the way I see it, that it isn't an issue, and yes, that's important. I don't want to, as I, you know, Hope says, I don't take that seriously enough, and I do. You know, I understand that she has made that decision, that she's fine with donor sperm. But for me, this is still a live issue, and as I've said before, I will make that call if I have to. But I wish there was somebody I could just talk to about how uncomfortable it makes me feel, instead of just being told, don't worry, you'll get over it, and that's the kind of response. So that was a bit of an issue. The next was sort of the mechanics of how you choose a sperm donor. This is, again, another bloody expensive thing. This is extremely expensive. To have backup to the procedure that we're doing. So basically, we go in on the day that Hope has ovulated her extra ovum, and they're going to take them out, and they have to fertilize them with something. So hopefully I produce a good sample. If that doesn't work, hopefully the backup banked samples that I've done unfreeze and are usable. And if that doesn't work, then I go to a donor sperm. To have a donor sperm available, you have to have 3 samples available, and each of them costs approximately $500 a piece, and that doesn't include the shipping. So, you know, that's another just $1,500 you add on to the procedure, you know, and the procedure itself is $5 grand for IVF and another $2 or $3 grand for the ICSI, which is, you know, it's just the costs mount. You know, on the plus side, if we get fertilized ovum out of this, we don't have to go through this whole process again. It's a much less invasive procedure and a lot less costly. But it's extraordinary how these things mount up. And then she starts taking us through the various service providers, the sperm donation banks that produce samples that we'll be able to purchase. Now, there's a lot of, you know, very interesting regulation that goes behind this and all the rest. I don't think I'm going to go into that in detail right now. What I am going to go through is the experience of being presented with these catalogs of names and starting to have to make decisions on how we're going to make this decision. Do we want somebody racially similar to myself so that the child will hopefully have some of my features? And we've sort of both come to the conclusion, and I do feel it this way, is that if we go forward with sperm donation, at some point the child is going to have to know. Secrets that are held within families always blow up in your face. Always, always. A lie will always come and bite you in the ass later on. So it's going to have to be a known thing to the child, at least at some point, and probably earlier than later, that they're not biologically mine. the question is, do we care about other people? But then I'm making this post, so obviously privacy is kind of less of a concern than it might otherwise be. So that's one issue, the racial issue. The other issue, she says, and you can see the faces of the donor if you want. And I had an immediate reaction to that. I did not want to see the face of the donor, and I found the reaction myself, as visceral as it was, very interesting. Yes, I'm able to be, and then also clinically, now why is he feeling that way? And I don't need to see the face of the donor. I need to know everything about his medical background. Kind of less interested in his little essay about himself. I want to know about that medical background. Of course, they can lie. There's no checking up on them, so if there's a history of mental illness, there's no way to know. I mean, certain genetic diseases are screened for, so you'll know about them, but there's very little way to know, for instance, if there's heart disease in the family, if there's diabetes. One we read actually listed heart disease and diabetes in the immediate family. I was like, that's a great candidate right there. So, you know, these are decisions that we're going to have to make on what, you know, do I want an engineer? Do I want an architect? Do I want a writer? You know, it's on the romantic of me, of course a writer would be a good idea. And then again, I know how unbalanced so many writers are. So maybe we better stick with the engineer. And again, I know some engineers. So that is going to be a huge process. We have to sit here and decide possibly who's going to be the father of my child. How do you react to these things? You know, how am I supposed to react to this process? And it's not the simple, you know, yeah, you just look through the catalog and pick somebody viable. I'm sorry, but it's not this, but it almost feels like I'm picking another husband for my wife. You know, I'm welcoming somebody else into the family. I am. In a very real sense, I am welcoming somebody else into the family. And yet, I have no interest in having a relationship with this person. You know, there's a question, do you want an open adoption or an anonymous? Not adoption, an open donation or anonymous. So basically, you can either have records that are scrubbed of any identifying features, you still get the medical records and so on, or do you actually want the last name and last known address? And that's to some extent a question for how the child is going to eventually have to deal with it. What if they want to seek out their biological father later on? How do I feel about that? In the end, I think that once you create another human being, as a parent, my own feelings sort of take second fiddle to that. And I would have to support my child in whatever decision that they make. Is it irresponsible of me to close the door on their ability to find out who their father is if they want to find out later on? These are difficult decisions, and I frankly, you know, you don't have the tools to make them. You know, I don't have a PhD in this particular topic. I do have a rather unfortunate perspective, having read as part of my job as many family law cases as I have. Paternity suits are very ugly. Things that threaten a man's position in the family often lead to very, very difficult conflict. Am I strong enough to be able to put that aside? And these are important questions. And that was what I was found to be so disappointing about the session today, was there was absolutely no guidance whatsoever on how to deal with that conflict. You know, and maybe for the women, or for me, or I mean, for some people, it's just shopping in a catalog. You pick somebody, it's fine. But to me, it's something else. I really do feel that this decision is, if we have to use a sperm donation, something that impacts the family fundamentally. And I wish I could have this conversation with somebody. I'm having it with you. And all of you, I would like to, the level of support that you've offered, both me and my wife, you know, in this forum and elsewhere, has been spectacular. I really appreciate it. It's a tremendously lonely process, and to know that other people are sharing it with us has been extremely helpful. But in the other hand, you know, to be able to have this conversation with somebody who's gone through it, and perhaps, you know something about it as well, has some gentle expertise. You know, you want to find kind of I don't know what I want. But I feel lonely in this decision, and maybe that's just the way it is. Maybe this is something we come to terms with by ourselves. But, yeah, I don't feel that I have the background, really. But I have to make these decisions. And frankly, you know what, with life, you make the decisions you have to make, not the ones that you're qualified to make. Hopefully they coincide, but often they don't. So you do your best. So I'll do my best. But it's not easy. This is not easy. This is not. And I did not want to see those photographs at all.